Hi, I'm Ann Coulter. Welcome to my Substack. Today I am interviewing Jon Levine, impresario of the fabulous Beach Cafe in New York. We miss you, John. And now an amazing reporter for the Free Beacon. I'd forgotten how good you are, John. Before that, political reporter for the New York Post, where during that entire time, he had the entire contents of the Hunter Biden laptop on his home computer.
Amazing I was never rated. What's on there?
And before that, what was that commie outfit you were working for when I met you?
We first met when I was working at Mike.com, which has mercifully gone bankrupt out of Missouri. And then it was bought by a wonderful man named Brian Goldberg, who owns a food.
Oh yeah, he was my brothers went to my oldest brother went to GW with his father.
Brian bought it out of bankruptcy for, I heard 5 figures, but the real number I heard might have even been 4 figures.
No,
Uh,
he's a huge success. He also
right.
did Bumble and all these websites.
Right.
Yeah, Brian Goldberg's
And
a huge success.
yeah, so he owns it, and it still kind of lives on as a zombie website where I don't, the authors all have very strange foreign names, and the articles are very not really relatable to anything, and I don't think too much effort is being put into it. But I like that my archive of silly woke content can still exist there, and if you want to read about how we were upset about white guys with dreadlocks or women on Cinco de Mayo with fake mustaches, you can read our full archive of women who wore fake mustaches on Cinco de Mayo.
I believe your experience at Mike.com did more than any other single event to turn you away from liberalism because
Well, I
you
mean,
were a liberal then, and all you guys would tell me about was the crazy stuff that was going on in your
I
office.
know you are so indulgent with us, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure we sounded so stupid, but it was a learning experience for me. I lived abroad, as maybe you remember. I lived in China for a few years. I kind of couldn't find a job after during the recession. I ran away, and I taught English, and I worked in a few different places. And I didn't realize how bad things had become until I got back to the US and I got this job at Mike.com. And I point blank was told I could not get a promotion because I was white. The exact term used was you don't have the right look. And then someone with the right look was hired, and I will leave it to your imagination as what the right look was.
Hmm.
And the individual who told me that, I don't want to name names, but he is currently on trial right now for possession of child pornography. You can
Oh
Google.
my gosh, you've got to name names.
I'm not going to name names. Who said that? Okay, it was Slade Sommer.
Okay, we're
It's,
looking that up. I'm going to link to it under your video. Wow, what is it with liberals and child porn?
I will tell you when that news broke, the Post definitely was covering it.
Okay, we'll link to the Post articles then. Well, I've been reading some of your work from, I mean, I read you every now and then, but I was specifically going through and reading everything, and I'm going to do that on a regular basis now because your articles for the Free Beacon have just been fantastic. You are such a good reporter.
Very kind of you to say.
You know I'm not kind, I'm honest. Um, the one, I don't know if this is the most recent one, but it's the one that perhaps annoys me the most, though you have several in this category. And this is this congressional candidate in Illinois for the Ninth District who used to work for really impressive credentials, Media Matters, with the preposterous name of Kat Abu Hazela. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, I think I remember that family on the Mayflower.
Yes,
The
yes.
Abucadelos, and
The
the
Beacon Hill Abu
yeah, yes,
Hazela.
yeah, that's right. Part of the Boston Brahmins.
Okay,
Yes.
tell that story because there are a few things that particularly stand out to me there.
Well, that was where she went to an ICE protest, right? And she, there have been so many acts of violence now committed against ICE officers all around the country for just doing their jobs, for merely enforcing the law and making sure that the only people in this country have a legal right to be here, which is their mandate. Everyone says, "Oh, they're an extrajudicial." They're not anything. They've been around. I think George W. Bush created ICE, and their job is to enforce who the laws of who are is should be here, who's allowed to be here, and who's not allowed to be here. And I know for a very long time we weren't enforcing these laws, and we kind of were letting their mandate lapse. But that doesn't. It's not a crime to enforce the law. It's not fascism to enforce the basic laws of our country and to vigorously enforce them, I would say. I mean, the problem is you can let in 10 million people illegally in 2 weeks, and
Yep.
getting rid of 10 million people is, every single person is like a month-long process, and the ACLU is going to file a brief, and it just, I mean, look at someone like Mahmoud Khalil, who should be
Yes.
gone. Like he's not a U.S. citizen. The green card is something the president can zap for any reason, and
Hmm.
yet he's still here. He's like a tumor that you can't cut out. Or keeps growing back. He should not be here. Every day he's here, I am reminded of just how arduous this process will be. And I digress. I want to go back to Kat. So
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
part of the next generation of Democrats who are basically doing the wink, wink, nod, nod at this kind of political violence. And if
Hmm.
you probably saw polling, I think something close to 40% of Democratic voters believe political violence can be justified, which is crazy. That's tens of millions of people. And
Yes.
as Democrats will remind you constantly, we are a very armed society. So when you have tens of millions of people in a very armed society who believe political violence can be justified, and you have one side of the aisle screaming fascism every single day,
Yes.
consequences are inevitable. Because look, if you could go back in time and kill Hitler, I would do that. I think most people would do that. And if you call President Trump Hitler every single day, the obvious consequences are unavoidable. So
Yes.
very
And
dangerous.
all conservatives, including,
Right,
Charlie Kirk. We're going to get to
right,
him in a minute.
right.
No, you're absolutely right. The weird self-righteousness of these people protesting the enforcement of the law. How about
Yeah.
going and blocking EPA administrators? We're coming to inspect whether you're building on a wetland. No, no, this is so outrageous. No, it's only when it comes to bringing in people that will completely change the nature of our country. And I was thinking, it's also she's Miss Palestinian rights.
Yep.
And which you detail in your article, which is totally contrary to, it seems to me, the Palestinian position is they're just, living their lives in their homeland, and because of a war in Europe, suddenly they have to leave their homes, Jews move in, the new state of Israel is created. So, as far as the Palestinian rights people are, as far as their argument goes, they've had, invaders come in and take over there. So why are they for the invaders coming in the US? No, of
Yeah.
course, there's no logical consistency. It's just they will always root against the civilized people and for the uncivilized people.
I mean, anyone can look at the videos in Europe, in Germany, and France, and the United Kingdom, and see what happens with the growth of this population. And we're not there yet. Europe's actually quite a bit further down the road. You might remember the 3 million Syrians Germany took in. And now that the war is over in Syria, they're not in a rush to go back. Surprise, surprise. Europe is further down the road than we are. We should be looking at Europe and being like, whoa, let's pump the brakes.
In a
And
sense, they are. This is the first time they've had any third worlders, whereas we've been bringing in not the Islamic fascists. Since 9/11, we went, overdrive to bring
right.
in
It's a
more
religion
Muslims.
of peace, and it's a religion of peace. George W. Bush, who has many faults, but the worst thing was after 9/11, he gets on TV and says, folks, Islam's a religion of peace.
Yes.
He gave Americans permission to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
And the conversation we're now having about radical Islam in our country should have happened, obviously, after 9/11, and it didn't.
Yes.
We went back to sleep, and now obviously that population in our country has doubled. And if you look at Dearborn, I don't know, it looks like a different country. And there was an
Yes.
amazing Guardian article about how this liberal city elected a Muslim city council for the first time ever. Look this up, 2023. And the first thing they did was take down all the gay pride flags. And the headline was like, a sense of betrayal, progressive upset. And it's so sad, and it's a tiny little window into what's coming.
Okay, now you're making me sympathetic to them.
No, but like
No, I know, people supporting. But I want to push back on the idea that Europe is in a worse position than we are. They're in a worse position in terms of all of the third world muzzies raping and hatcheting people. Yes,
that's
yes,
pretty bad.
absolutely. No, that is pretty bad. But how do you get them? Look at what happened to California, the this beautiful state that gave us our two most important Republican presidents in the last century, Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. And now they're the ones voting for the Democrats. Why? We brought in 30 million Mexicans. So, yeah, okay, great. Third worlders from other parts of the world don't commit the sort of just barbaric violence that third world Muslims do. But they vote for the party that wants to bring
Right.
those third world Muslims in. And, England and France are still 88 to 90% French and 88 to 90% English. We're 57% at least white Americans, and our demographics are about 10 to 20% black and 80 to 90% white. That's what it was for 400 years. And then Teddy Kennedy came along and changed it. So we're way farther along this path. If they just throw out and one thing, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but one thing that is worth saying about the hideous immigration policies that we've had all this time, we used to get highly educated Muslims. We used to get well spoken, high IQ, don't dress like clowns Muslims. And no, now, it's giving a bad name to all of them. We're bringing in, you just don't want the third world from any place. It's not a good fit.
I will not say who this was. I had a Republican member of Congress in a Fox News green room with me right before the 2024 election. And this is when Trump was in Dearborn. He was in Michigan, and he was trying to pretend like he was the great friend of Islam. And some Republican was like, "Oh, Johnny, Trump really he loves Islam. He's a very pro-Muslim president. The Muslim ban, that he didn't mean that. That's not in his heart." And I was just like, "But what if you were a single issue Muslim ban voter?" I was like, "I hope that's not true." And then he just looked at me. He had no answer. They had to go on TV. But I'm not going to do this. This is a funny moment where he was trying to snow me with this BS. Trump loves, And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, you don't have to sell me. You could save that for Michigan. I don't need to.